Hello, welcome to the Creative Cousins podcast. Here
Nice
we
to have you back
go.
here.
Yeah, nice to see you. Um,
This week we're going to talk about um what are we talking about this week? Oh,
um,
we're talking about the learning process, learning art or photography, um on learning how to create.
yeah, I mean, how we basically improved over the years and, like how we used constructive criticism to help us improve. Yeah,
And other little
yeah,
lessons we learned along the
exactly.
way.
We've learned a lot. So I have a lot to learn, but I feel like, especially growing up, had to learn some things that I'm like, okay. There's a lot of times growing up, but I was like, wow, this drawing looks so good. I can't believe I did that. Oh my God, I'm so good at drawing. And then I'll like show the drawing to somebody else or like my parents. And my dad be like, yeah, he'd be like,
For dads.
there was no such thing as, oh man, awesome job. Whoa, you did great. Whoa, awesome. No, 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 no,
There was
no,
no participation
no, no.
awards in Bethany's
In art,
childhood.
no, no.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Or this is my dad's favorite thing to say, draw what you see, not what you think you see. Draw what you see. Now, these wise words might not sound like much to you, but but actually, growing up, I actually understand what that means now. Like I get it now.
Can you explain to me because I don't get it? Like, isn't that just realism?
Okay, what it means is when you are drawing, you are focused, when you're drawing a person, a lot of times you'll just want to do what you think is there. So if you're drawing an eye, you're thinking, well, eyes in your head, eyes look like this, but you're actually not really looking at the actual drawing. Like the curvature of the eye is different. Like on first of all, each person has like different type of eyes, but also like if you're just going by like memory, he's like, don't go by memory, don't go by what you think an eye looks like. Go what you actually see. Like look carefully at the drawing, basically. Like look carefully. You need to really like pay attention, basically. It's just kind of pay attention.
So it's basically like another way to say like remove your own bias.
Yeah, basically. It's like don't go by because oh my God, I could go on a whole rant about this and I will. I have shout out to my future YouTube channel. I'm gonna go into detail about references. No one will really care that much about. But I have a thing about references. A lot of people seem to have this like notion that if you use a reference, like for some reason, like it's less impressive than if you did it from memory. It's like, oh, I did this face from memory. I did it from memory. And you're like, okay. And usually when you do things from memory, it's crap. Okay, let's be honest here. Unless you have a photographic memory, it's not gonna look as good as if you have actual references. Okay, so like, do you think Michelangelo was like, yeah, let me do this from memory? No, he had like actual models. Like he would, all these famous artists, they have models, they have everything like that. Still life doesn't matter what it is, they have references. So it's
I think it's
like,
also like it's like something to be said for like also like draw how it is, not how you want it to be. Because I think in our head sometimes we have a certain way that we like want it to look.
yeah. I mean,
And
and
that kind of
that's
impedes the process. Like if you're putting expectations on the end result, it's kind of gonna actually do the opposite for you. It's gonna make it harder.
well, I mean, and it really just depends what you're working on, right? If you're doing something stylized, then do what you want. But if you're doing something that you want to be like really like realistic to and naturalistic to the object you're trying to do, like if you're trying to do a portrait commission and it's somebody's face, you don't want to imagine that. Like, you don't want to make that up unless you clear it with them that you're just going to go kind of off the cuff or whatever. But usually, whenever you're trying to draw someone's face, you're going to actually draw their face. So you don't want to go by memory. Like, if I wanted to draw a portrait of Allie, even though I grew up with her for 28 years, I'm not going to go and be like, yeah, nah, Allie, go away. I'm going to go try to do from memory. Good luck.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
I mean, I think you're right. Like, it does depend what you're trying to do, but I think for the most part, like, I see what you're saying, where people think it's a flex to like
exactly.
say like,
That's what I'm
oh,
saying.
like,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, it's just you're doing something different than me. Like,
Yeah. And
I don't
like,
know.
that's
Yeah.
all good for you. But I'm just saying, I just don't like people like make it seem like it's frowned upon to use references when it's
Yeah,
like,
and I think that's
let's be
why like
real.
you feel better, like you personally feel better drawing photos that you've personally taken, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't want it to be like, you know, um, compared. Like it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
But it's also not something that you just like made up, like you compose the image that way.
Yeah. And, that's like a whole conversation and maybe a future podcast episode about references and all about them. But as far as like with criticism goes, like, the draw what you see thing was like one of the biggest things that I feel like I learned that I actually used. But yeah, every time he said it, I was like, what on earth are you literally talking about? Me being 8 years old and being like, what? I just
And you
want
just want him to say like, "Oh, good job, Bethany." Like you just wanted because when you're a kid, you just love like, you're looking for validation from your parents.
yeah. And but looking back, I'm like glad. Like I'm glad that
Yeah.
like it probably could have been a little less, a little more positive. Whatever, it's fine. But looking back, I'm like, now whenever someone, my parents or my brother or whatever, when they say, "Oh, that's good," then it's like they actually mean it.
Yes, yeah.
So it's
There's something to be
yeah,
said for that. Yeah, because when now you can believe what they're saying as true
yeah, exactly.
because you weren't always good. Now you are.
Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, they didn't compare my art to like other kids. Like it wasn't about like, okay, I'm 14, right? And did my first self portrait in high school or something. And I thought it was good. And like if I compare it to like other people in the class, I mean, past me was like, yeah, this is good. This is really good. but but I'm comparing it to like other people. But if I like show it to like my parents, my brother, they'd be like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, this could go in a whole other direction too, where we could now talk about how it's not helpful to compare your art to other people's.
Yeah, I mean,
Because if you're comparing in a way that it's like, oh, theirs is so much better than mine, that's not going to help you either. And
yeah,
it's also not going to help you to say mine is better than theirs because none of those things get you any further from where you are.
yeah. I mean, and there's so many different. It's really complicated. It gets complicated when you're comparing because there are so many different kinds of art styles.
Yeah, like you can't really compare like apples to oranges either.
Yeah, a lot of times it is like that. I mean, and you could compare it in a way where it's like something like, there's it's not necessarily bad to compare yourself with others. It's just, you don't want to be like feeling bad about it or like feeling like, it's hard to
Or let it
explain.
discourage you.
Yeah, you don't
It
want to
shouldn't
let,
discourage you from keeping at it.
yeah, I mean, some
Um,
of it could be motivating. You could see something that's like really good and you're like, wow, like that's really cool. Like, I want to do that.
yeah, like inspiring. Like I
Yeah.
think that would be my advice actually. That's something I've kind of done recently because I used to compare and think like, oh, I'll never be that good. But I think when you realize that you actually can be that good, you just all you do is you just let it inspire you. You
Yeah.
you don't you don't like compare it to your work and be like, oh, like I'm never gonna be like that. Like you just look at it and you appreciate it for what it is, And maybe you even share it with somebody. Like nowadays, what I like to do if I see something that I really, really would love to accomplish one day, like if there's a photo that I'm like, oh, that is so good. Like I would love to do this one day. What I've started doing is just sharing it on my story because I feel like it's almost like my way of like holding myself accountable that like someday like I will create something that I feel like it's at that level and that I will be then proud to like share it.
Yeah.
Um and I always like say too like I feel like there's nothing wrong with like supporting other artists like just because like some people might think like oh if I share this people are going to look at my work and see it so much worse. But like that person that you're sharing that work from, like they've done the work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think artists supporting other artists and photographers supporting other photographers is always going to get us all further than
Yeah.
comparison and competition.
I mean, like one of the biggest inspirations for artists are other artists. Like other artists literally inspire each
Facts.
other. So,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. Like we want, like, a lot of times, like you're literally, when you're drawing something, like you're looking at something, like you're looking at things around you. You're inspired by nature. You're inspired by other artists. Like it's all kind of part of the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
we use a
Exactly.
mix of ideas, like a mix of things. It's not just
Yeah.
one
And like
thing.
there's a reason why like we're not all automatically good at it. Like that would be so boring. We almost need to like keep continuing to like push each other to keep growing. Our like if we weren't doing this type of stuff, like we weren't sharing our work with each other, like none of us would get better or like go outside like our comfort zones.
I mean,
So yeah.
that brings me back to college, which I know like some people think that you don't really need a college education for art. And like that's fair enough. Like obviously you can be self-taught, and that's totally fine. Like I was basically I self-taught myself growing up until college, basically, and using my
Self-taught myself photography, but
yeah,
it's a little bit different.
yeah. I mean, and so like I totally understand that like some people are not going to want to go to college for art. I get it. But there were things that I did learn that like I am so glad that I did, and a lot of that was about constructive criticism. If I didn't have I mean, obviously, like my parents were honest about their feedback, and that really helped me. Last episode I was like, oh, my brother also gave me feedback and some was helpful, some wasn't, but I did get a lot of different opinions that really helped. But in college you see even more opinions, like you hear even more opinions, because every college class you have like studio class, so like illustration, ceramics, whatever it was, as like a studio class, there's usually a critique section, where after everybody's finished the project, you put it up on the wall, and then we all kind of talk about it. And so you are comparing, sort of like you can't help it, right? You're not gonna be able to help feeling a little bit competitive. At least for me,
It's so
I'm a
true.
little bit competitive sometimes. And it's, just the way world works. And so you compare yourself and you're like,
And it's the way our egos work
yeah,
too,
I mean,
because
yeah. And so it's fine. I was kind of quiet for a while, so it's not like I would make any opinions known. But eventually I did. Actually, it was my illustration class that I really started to get more outspoken about like critiquing other people, because it's helpful, even if it's something that like is not like always positive, like it's still helpful to them as long as it is actually constructive. And then what
yeah,
we kind of
right.
learned too was like you would say something that you do like about it, like, oh, I like the colors, but I felt like the composition could have been fixed, or you were basically told like you got a grade for how you basically participated in the class, right? You're basically told like you need to say more than just I like it. Yeah, it's good. Good job.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
good
It's almost
job.
like you're doing them
Yeah.
like a disservice because if you're not actually invested in helping make them better, like why are you there?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you have to say something to help them improve. Like, oh, I think that you could improve by doing this. And there were like some
Yeah.
times where I would like not agree with what somebody would say about my thing, and then I'd be like, okay, like you just kind of like take it. And so you do like learn, you learn that like everyone's gonna have their own opinions. You don't have to take every single criticism like,
Oh my gosh, this was
seriously.
the biggest thing I learned as well. And one of the things that I would say I learned about that is that you should never accept criticism from someone's work that you don't like. Um,
I mean, personally,
because,
I don't agree with that, but you can continue.
well, I mean, let me be more clear. Like, I think if they are like a completely different style than you, maybe they even do a completely different kind of photography. Like, I would never take criticism seriously from a sports photographer that was criticizing my work because what we do is so different. So, when I go and I post my work, I've done this before where I've posted my work in like photographer communities online, and a lot of them are like all different photographers. So, I'm talking like maternity, newborn, sports photographers, like landscape, real estate. Like I get so many mixed reactions. And what I have to do is like sort through the criticism and like pick the criticism that I know is going to be helpful to me as a wedding photographer. Like there are some things that like I know aren't applicable, like to my area. Um, So you can't always, because people are always going to take opportunities to give criticism, and like some of it wasn't all that constructive either. Like I got a lot of negative stuff too. And if they have only negative things to say and nothing positive to say, it's probably not somebody you really want to take criticism from. So you also have to think about who it's coming from, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying like you shouldn't take anything seriously from anyone's work that you don't like. I guess that was like a bad generalization. But I just mean you should be very discerning about who you're taking criticism from because you don't need to take in all the criticism.
Yeah, so I think it really depends because, even though like people might not have something, they might not also be artists or they might not also do like charcoal drawings. I get a lot of feedback from my boyfriend Sean. He's not somebody that does drawings and he doesn't really do art really, right? And but I still take his feedback really seriously. Like he still has like really good
Well,
points. And he doesn't have
I think that's
anything to
fine
do with
though.
what I'm doing
Here's my
though.
thing is like that's fine because he's somebody that you trust and that wants the best for you. And I ask Alex for advice on my work as well a lot of the time. And I think it's just like they don't necessarily have to be doing what you do, but like you just need to like think about what their motivations are. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
because
it really depends. I think that we should, as long as it's something that is actually constructive and that, it's not just like negative things just to be negative. Some people might just be having a bad day and they don't want to, be very kind. And so you don't want to listen to those people. But I mean, you could still learn something though from, there might be something that people might still like be helpful with. Like even if they are like a sports photographer, they still have to know a little bit about lighting, composition. They still might give you something that's like helpful, is what I'm saying. So
yeah, I think what I was saying though more is that like the advice that they were giving me like is something that like isn't realistic to wedding photography,
it's a
if
very
that
like
makes sense, because
niche
they've
specific.
it's very niche specific. Yeah, like they were trying to say something that like all wedding photographers would be like, no, we wouldn't do that. Like because we're in like a customer service type of like we have a lot of like one-on-one interaction with our clients throughout their wedding day. Whereas like a sports photographer, they're just there to document. Like
Yeah.
it's different. Like there are certain things that we just wouldn't do because we want to make our clients happy. Um, so that's really more what I meant by that. Because like I'm not discounting their experience at all. It's just that like I wouldn't go comment on like a sports photographer's picture and be like, this is how you should do it because I don't know anything about that niche. I feel like that would be just out of line. Like I have no experience in that area. So unless I knew for sure what I was talking about, I just wouldn't touch that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like, yeah, what I mean is like, if it's something that like, that, is general, that the basics,
Yeah, like
everyone
if it
would
was
know.
basic advice.
Like,
Yeah.
like there are certain things that many different artists could do. Because like even in college when we were doing like those critiques, like there were people that are like less experienced than I am and like whatever they are, you still have to kind of take their feedback on board because they're still, they might have different life experiences, and it's interesting to be like, oh, okay, like I haven't actually thought of it in that way, or like you get a lot of different opinions. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I could see what you're thinking of, or like it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And like I think it's like good, you should listen to it. I'm not saying don't listen to it. I'm just saying like don't take it all so hardly. Cause like I think like
Yeah,
one of the things that's tough is like taking it like super personal. Like
yeah.
this gets easier also over time, but like when I posted those images, like I got like out of nowhere like hundreds of comments.
Oh my god.
And people were just disagreeing like in the comments. Like someone would write something negative and underneath it someone would be like, no, like that's wrong or whatever. And like so it was just like really controversial. And so I had to like really like sort through all that and like try not to take the negative stuff to heart.
Yeah,
Because like there was a lot of good advice in there that was like, oh, you can improve this. And like it made me better. Like I don't regret it. But there
yeah.
was also like some stuff that was like really like just not helpful because it just
Yeah,
doesn't apply to me.
yeah, exactly. You kind of have to like take it on board, but you have to like really like,
I think that's what's helpful though about
yeah,
what you were saying, like being in college for like a specific class or a specific thing where you're all like trying to accomplish the same goal.
yeah.
You would then have to take everybody's thoughts seriously.
Yeah, and so there are times where you're like, man, I really disagree with that. But you kind of have to be like open and be like, okay, I'm going to listen to it. I don't have to like do it, but you listen to it and you're like, okay, I see what you're saying or whatever. Like there was a couple times where I had an argument, with somebody I had to go back and forth. Like they're, they're like, their suggestion for somebody else's art, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, like there would be some like disagreements sometimes, and like it was kind of it
It is funny when that happens.
got to be kind of fun though, like because it was like a
Yeah.
structured thing. It wasn't just like people like shouting at each other or being
Oh my
mean.
gosh, I'm so glad you said that word, structure, because I have been like in my head, like when you're talking sometimes, I will have a point that I like hold in my head that I want to like get to later if I can remember it. And one of the things was about how like even if you're not able to go to college for art, um a similar thing can exist where you can find community and put structure to your art. And I think that college gives you that structure of like constructive criticism and like a structure of when you're going to learn things and how. And if you don't have that, you can still get that, but it's going to be harder for you because you're going to have to go
Yeah,
out and actually find it. And you
yeah,
have to find a community and you're going to have to uh like really like I don't know, you're going to have to like get creative with like and like try to like find similar people.
yeah. It's a lot
Yeah, so
harder.
I
Yeah,
think I think I think you're right. Like I feel like in order to get better, you have to have some structure and that's like the main takeaway is like
yeah.
the structure. And you got a lot of that from going to school for it, which is what you needed.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like improved from just like beginning of college to the end is like a huge difference. And like I feel like even and that was I don't know how long ago that was. I can't, I literally can't think of anything right. I think, well, I started college more than 10 years ago. So whenever I ended, it's been a while. Anyway, but I started, when I started college to now is like a completely different thing. Because just I feel like I'm a completely different level than it was when I first started. And when I first started college, I was like, I thought it was really good. I was so like cocky about certain things, but my art, and then that kind of like that kind of changes. Like your opinion on your art changes a lot too. But I definitely
It
improved a lot.
waxes and wanes.
Yeah, basically, and every day
Sometimes
can be
I think I'm
different.
shit.
Yeah, honestly though, like yesterday for me, I'm like,
Yeah, you're not always gonna have days where you're like happy about your work.
yeah, unfortunately not. And then there's like days where when you like finish something, like especially when like in the middle of a drawing, like right now I'm in the middle of a long drawing. I want to quit and I want to be like, I hate this. I hate this. It looks bad. I suck. Why am I not doing this better? What is wrong with me? Why is this taking so long? And then at the end, you're like, damn, I did that. Or
Meanwhile,
like,
the drawing has looked good the whole time,
no, she's being very
by the
nice.
way. I mean, it's more than a lot of people could ever do. So to me, when you show it to me, I'm like, damn, like that's advanced. And like I've seen the evolution of your work, obviously, but like you were always good and you were able to do more than the average person. But it's just like, yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, it just really depends. Like sometimes you're feeling better about it than others, like it's just unfortunately how it goes when you're constantly creating. I just,
Yeah, I think it's also easy to be cocky like when you first get into something because like you hadn't been through that constructive criticism yet. You hadn't been exposed to other people's work, a lot of other people's work, I should say,
yeah.
because you've been exposed to some. But
Yeah.
like for me, like when you start, like you have nothing to compare your work to unless you've been around.
Yeah.
Um, so you're gonna think like, oh, this is awesome because it's new and exciting, and I really like what I've done here. But then you're gonna see a lot, and then you're gonna be like, oh shoot, I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I'm really glad that like, not everybody gets that opportunity to go to like museums, go to art galleries, have family that have done art. Like it's like, I'm was really lucky that I grew up around I grew up around a lot of people that were also creating a lot of stuff. So, but there are people that like they don't have a lot of like things to go off of, and luckily we have the internet now. But I can't even imagine like, if you didn't have the internet, or if you weren't around a lot of museums or a lot of people that did art, like you probably wouldn't see a lot of it. It would be a lot harder to get started and be inspired. But so I'm lucky that I grew up with a lot of that, a lot of like inspiration. And then as I got older, I saw even more. It's like,
Yeah,
I love going to different galleries. Like I love just looking around and looking at things. Anywhere I, it sounds so stupid, but I love just walking. Like when I go to like, on vacation, it's just fun to like walk around and just look at things.
look,
Just to
yeah,
look at
no, I
things.
actually agree, and it's like other people think I'm weird for it sometimes. Like if you don't have like if you haven't trained your eye for that, you're gonna just walk by it. And I can say that from experience because like 3 years ago, I wasn't really looking at this stuff. Um, but now I feel the same way whenever I go on vacation or even if I'm just in my own home and the light happens to like hit the wall in like a certain way, I will like my attention gets caught by that. And I'm like, wow, that is like an everyday average thing that's been there every day. But I just noticed it and like suddenly I see like the beauty or the value in it. And like I think I showed you that picture I took of
Yeah,
like
I
the
remember that
light
one.
coming through. Like I had this like vintage curtain with like lace and flowers, and the light like shone through in a certain way, like onto the wall through the curtain during the golden hour, and I had never noticed it before, but it had always been there. So I think it's like finding like art and beauty in like every day and in the mundane is like not something that everybody like does. So if you're like stopping while you're walking on the street with your, with Sean or like with your significant other, you're like, oh, that's so pretty. Like not everyone is going to appreciate like what you appreciate. Like some people are going to want to just keep moving. Um, but doesn't mean you can't be excited about it.
Exactly. It's like, and there's like a recent example or semi-recent example. Sean's family was visiting, and he went to this big garden area, about like half hour away or so, and it's this really big like botanical gardens place basically, and there's like flowers everywhere, but it's still the winter time though, so there weren't that many. But you bet, best believe, I still took hundreds of photos of like the same flowers, but just different
Yeah.
angles. I'm like,
She sent it to me
ooh,
after. She was like, "Do you
look at
like
the
this
different,
one or
look at
this
the
one?"
lighting in this one. How about this angle? Like I just like will stand there, just like looking at it, like, wow, look at the
Just
way
like
the
really
light is.
admiring like the structure of the
It's just them.
flower
I just like looking at like different angles of things and like
and perspectives.
yeah, and different going like yeah, jumping around, looking at the leaves through like going through the leaves at the flower. Like there's
Yeah.
just like a lot of
And like people will think you're mad for this. Like people will be like, "What is she doing? She's been taking a picture of that flower for 10 minutes."
yeah, I know. Like they've already gone far ahead. I'm like lagging behind, like
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
like
But when
it's
you see it, like you can't help it because there's something there that
yeah.
needs to be captured that like you can't walk away until it's done.
Yeah, I we like say like, oh, we have the eye. Like we have like this eye that like helps us with like art, like or recognizing art. And I think that comes from our parents probably, but
I think
like
maybe it is a little bit genetic, but to be honest with you, I wasn't really like this until a few years ago.
yeah.
So I actually do believe that
Well,
everyone
yeah,
can
everyone
do it,
can. Everyone can.
but you have to like, and like some people it might be easier. For me, it was faster. I feel like probably because we have something, but like I think everyone can. It just that some people might take longer
Yeah.
to get there. Um, like everybody's on a different timeline and like a skill level and like what they start with is different and like I personally like I feel like in the past year because I just kept doing more and more like it's really grown a lot. But I think other things in conjunction with that can like really help move it along. And like I won't go into all that right now because this it like isn't on the topic of like our podcast really, but
It's a whole
I
topic
feel
amongst
like
itself.
for me like improving my mental health and regulating my nervous system through like meditation and through like spirituality has like really kind of opened that more that door for me. And I don't know like maybe there is some like correlation like between like our third eye and our eye for art. I don't know. But that's a topic for another time. I just wanted to simply say that I really wasn't what I would consider like an artistic person for a long time. Like I went to nursing school. I was like very scientific. I used to be like kind of atheist. I don't know. It's just weird how quickly things change.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends. Honestly, I think it's like a lot of factors of things. I think if you're, for like me that grew up around it, you're just kind of prone to it. I think there is something that you could say like, oh, look, because my parents are artists, and there's a little bit of like genetics there. But that's kind of like something that, it's hard to really say. It also could just be how someone grows up to have that kind of like like thing. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I can't really speak to any like spiritual side because I am an atheist, but whatever works with you. But yeah,
Yeah.
you know, everybody has like their own like thing about how they see the world and stuff.
Yeah.
So
That could be also interesting to talk about is like motivations behind creating stuff. Because everybody has different reasons for getting
yeah,
into this.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and you know,
but
it is interesting. But yeah, like I just really like my mom, your mom. We would see them taking pictures constantly. And so I'm like, and you can't help but think it's like, is this like a genetic thing? Sometimes you're like,
right.
why is everybody so into taking pictures? Like, this is a picture taking household. And I didn't realize that it wasn't normal to constantly take pictures until like Sean
Right?
told me, he's like, yeah, we never grew up taking a lot of pictures. And I'm like, what?
It's not normal. And also, not everybody grew up with their dad directing all of their home movies. Um, so that's something my dad would do for us when we would get
Yeah.
together. I think we talked about this briefly in the last episode, but we didn't
Yeah.
talk about how much we did it. This was every family
Yeah.
vacation, y'all.
Every holiday, there was some video going on. Like, we had VHS tapes of
We
like,
had a plot already planned.
yeah. Oh, we had scripts.
Yeah. Like it was a thing. And like our moms would just be at the beach taking pictures during it.
Yes,
You know, like
constant pictures. Like we have so many photo albums of things, and like I didn't realize like that wasn't much of a thing. Like other people, like
yes.
they have pictures of themselves when they're younger, but they're like formal pictures. Like okay, they will sit down and they have like a photographer like take pictures, like a family photo or whatever. But like they
Oh,
didn't,
like
but not as much like candid stuff.
yeah, like our moms have like documented like their entire young lives.
Yeah. And like this is before like I guess nowadays people do that with like social media and whatever.
True. That's a
But
good
we were
point.
vlogging before it was popular.
We
Basically,
were the original vloggers.
I mean, your dad was doing that in the 70s or whatever. Like didn't he like have like videos like
Ever since I was born, and probably before then too, but especially once we were born.
yeah.
There are so many videos of me as a baby. There is like hours and hours of footage of me just in the bouncy thing,
Yeah.
just sitting there. Like just because I don't know, he thought probably it was so precious and like I don't know, like I feel like our family was just always,
Yeah.
recording, documenting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really like that we have all that stuff because, like, I'm just like a very nostalgic person. Like, I just get, like, I am a sucker for nostalgia. Like, doesn't matter what it is, TV shows from the 90s, whatever it is. But I'm, like, obsessed with looking back at the past. And, you know, like, it's just funny to think that a lot of, a lot of that probably has affected our future, like, especially with being able to look at things in a different light than maybe some other people that are not used to doing that. I don't know. But I think definitely how you grow up like really affects how you like your art and stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if I could have said that I would have done all this if I didn't have like early exposure to those things. But I feel like my exposure was significantly less than yours because my parents had like other jobs. Like my mom wasn't as artistic as your mom. Um, and my mom worked like various jobs, and my dad was a firefighter. Um, so I didn't really have a lot of art exposure, like just like pure art exposure. Like that wasn't something that we really talked about a lot. Um, but what really started it was when I went to college and I was already like in the like allied health sciences track, but my friend had bought a camera and she was doing other people's like senior photos for them and grad photos. I remember like going over her apartment one day and she was just kind of like fiddling with her camera and like showing me some stuff. And I just remember like think honestly that might have been the first time I ever was even in the room with like a professional like DSLR camera because like
Never in the
our like
room.
we just I don't know. I never took a photography class. I never did any of that in high school. Like my mom had a digital camera, but it wasn't one that you had like interchangeable lenses. You know, like I had been around like very simple and basic like stuff. So to like see that, I had never actually like held like a camera with like all the bells and whistles before, and it was like so big. I remember thinking like this is huge. Like I was like this is so huge and heavy. Like what is this? And it was so fascinating to me because like looking at the quality of the images, I was like wow, like and I like immediately like wanted to know more. And I don't remember at what point I then reached out to you about it, but I feel like we didn't really start talking about it until I actually got my first camera, which wasn't until probably 4 years later because
Oh,
I couldn't ever justify spending the money on it. I saw my friend's camera, I really wanted to do it, but I held off because I'd never had money in college.
yeah.
I had to like work during college. I had part-time jobs, but all that money would like go to like my living expenses, or like books or like gas and like phone bill or whatever. So I never like could justify spending 500 plus dollars on a camera
Yeah.
until I got my first job as a nurse and I finally had like real money.
Hmm.
So I finally got a camera, and that's when I think I started telling you that I was like doing photography. I'm not really sure. I don't remember a whole lot, but I just remember like you like sending me some Irene videos, Irene Rudnick videos and other stuff, and that kind of sparked it all off.
Well, I mean, and we would do like photo shoots together, like even before.
Yeah, when I had oh, that's true. I forgot. We would do that, but it was like, did we do what did we use?
Mostly our phones, probably. We did a lot of like photo shoot type stuff. There was this one photo
Yeah,
shoot we did with like a webcam, like a long time ago. Like we used to use like,
I don't even remember this.
yeah, there's like old videos, old photos and stuff like that. I was like just standing in,
Like with photo booth, like on
yeah, photo
iMac.
booth. And we also would do with like other kinds of like just, even as you got
Yeah, I used to
older.
do that with a lot of people, like take pictures with the photo booth. Now that you say it, I just didn't really think about that. But
Yeah. And then you did help me with my capstone in college.
yes, but that was after I had my first camera.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like your very beginnings. You were like still, I remember like, cause I had to do a thing where I was like jumping around fast, jumping and spinning around. And then I'm like, you were like, I got to figure out sports mode. Like, let me just figure out like the exposure and like, so it was like very beginnings of like your,
Yeah,
yeah, the,
I don't even know if I was shooting in manual at that point.
I don't know, probably not. I still have all of the pictures from it.
Yeah, I have them somewhere on a hard drive, but yeah, I just remember being like so it was so much to learn in the beginning.
And that was like 5 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, can you believe it was 5 years ago? And then probably a year after that is when I did those pictures of you like for your birthday. Was it for your
That was
birthday?
a
I feel
couple
like it
years
was.
later, I think. That was like 2021, I
Okay,
think.
yeah, that blue truck. Remember we used your dad's blue
Yeah.
truck
Yeah.
for some pictures, and I think at that point I had already like watched a bunch of YouTube videos and I kind of knew
Yeah.
by then a little bit what I was doing. So by then I was definitely using like manual mode. Um, but it was such a process.
Yeah.
And I think I actually love that it happened for me gradually and slowly because it was never stressful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I never like bought a camera and then was like, I'm gonna start a photography business and then had to learn it all immediately. I just like did it for fun and then the learning like I don't know, I would learn a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Like when I needed to know something new, I would just look it up and I would do it like on a photo shoot per photo shoot basis. Like, oh, I'm going to be doing this type of photo shoot. Maybe I should learn X. And
Yeah.
then I would go like look it up. I didn't ever have to do this in like a way that I was like under pressure, which was a blessing.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of photographers who pick up like really expensive cameras and then put pressure on themselves to like pay off the camera by doing professional photography,
Exactly.
which you can't just like learn overnight. It
Yeah.
has to be like a process.
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of, sad stories or a lot of like bad experiences that people had with photographers because they went with someone who was a very, very new, um, and all their photos came out terrible or crooked or too dark or like
Yeah.
just really grainy. And I'm just so grateful I never had to be like that person to like I don't know. I don't know.
No, you definitely learned a lot. And there's probably a lot of little things that you have to like figure out how to do like over the years. And so, I mean, it's a lot of props to you dealing with like all that pressure. Like it's so much to deal with like on the like on a day. Like, I can't even imagine like I like taking photos. Like I really like photography, but I can't imagine just like, all right, here's the day of the wedding. Let's hope I don't mess up and like hope make sure everything looks perfect because it's only their big day of their lives. It's like
Right, no big deal or anything.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh God, like
Um,
that would stress me out.
I
But
feel like it is stressful. I won't lie. Like, I do get nervous. And I think it goes away after like the first like half an hour, but there's always this period of time where I just have to get over myself and my anxiety.
yeah,
Um,
just get
like
over it.
arriving early. Arriving early always helps, but once you kind of like get comfortable and then like I don't know, like a big part of this also has to do with the relationship you have with your clients going into the photo shoot, which is why I never just am meeting someone for the first time when I'm photographing them.
Yeah,
Because that is something I used to do as a beginner and it was always stressful. I'm not one to just like be like, all right, meet you there. Like,
yeah,
I will have a call with you beforehand. I'll get to know you. And with my wedding couples, they get a complimentary engagement session now. So we always are going to be working together beforehand. And that makes a big difference for your nerves and for your like knowing what to expect.
I can imagine.
But
Yeah,
one thing, but one thing I will say also is that I may not have the same perspective as a lot of other wedding photographers because the job that I come from, I worked as a nurse in a hospital. So
yeah,
I was like used to being under pressure and a lot more of it. And not to say, I'm not saying that wedding photography is not stressful. I'm just saying that it is not as stressful as coding someone.
yeah,
It is not as stressful as trying to make sure you're arranging a safe discharge because this is the person's life.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's like one step beneath that. Like, I would say only one step
Only one,
because
just slightly
because it's
less.
still a big deal. It's still a huge deal. You don't want to mess up someone's wedding photos. That's all they have of their day.
Yeah,
So there's always precautions that you take, and you take as much as you can. But I still just love it because it allows me to be there for people and help people in a different way than in the hospital. And I feel like there is a lot more joy and happiness because I'm seeing people on the best days of their lives
hopefully.
instead of on their worst day of their life in their hospital.
Yeah,
So it's like a huge contrast for me, like going from such like a sort of, it's very sad, like some of the stories and stuff that I've seen and what I've been through in the hospital has been really sad stuff. And
yeah,
going from that to like being in like a really happy, it's still a lot of emotion. So in some ways the energy is the same. It's it's still really intense, but it's almost like the opposite side of that, which is really weird to see.
yeah, and that makes sense because at least you're used to that kind of stress level. Like, I mean, that's good that you don't have to even like stress about the stress that much. So, and in that way, it's good that you have had all that experience. So, like, then you can't really say that you've wasted any of that time, or like even though you
Exactly.
weren't
It was
doing.
never a waste.
Yeah.
I truly don't believe anything's ever a waste. Even though like sometimes I do get down about it because I'm like, wow, I went to school for 4 years and I may not even be doing this for my whole life. It shouldn't matter. I mean, if
Yeah.
you think about how many people like pivoted their career like midlife or even later, I know nurses that didn't become nurses until they were like in their 50s. Um, so I think we put so much pressure on ourselves in our early 20s to like know what we're doing for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And there is just no way you're gonna know. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you can wake up one day and decide you're gonna move to another country and start a whole new job and just be a waitress. Like, I think one thing that was freeing for me about starting my own business was like realizing that you really can, at least here in the US, you can do anything you set your mind to. Obviously, it's going to be harder for some people than other people, but it was kind of like crazy. And I think I also am saying this from maybe like a little bit more like I wasn't so like I was a little bit privileged in some ways, if that makes sense. Like even though like I had to take out loans to go to college, I was still able to go to college. Like not
Yeah.
everyone can say that. So yeah, I mean, I guess you can really do anything that you want to. It just some people have to work a lot harder to get
Yeah.
there than other people. So, but it was really liberating to just be like, you know what, I can do whatever I want. If I want to start my own business, I'm going to start my own business. And it was just like this really crazy thing. But
Yeah. I know that you were saying
yeah,
that like it didn't seem like as possible before, like growing up, like that you'd be able to start your own business. But now that you're grown, right? You're now that you have those resources, you're able to.
right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I think when you're younger, you're going to obviously rely on what your parents have to tell you about the world and how it is. And when you get older and you can kind of see more and do more, you'll realize that like is more opportunity out there than, some people might think.
Your world
Yeah,
opens.
I feel very grateful. Like if anything, like I feel very grateful for the experiences I had as a nurse and like for what nursing was able to do for me, which was I was able to buy a camera. I was able to travel a bit. I was able to see things that other people might not have been able to see. And if I had never become a nurse, I don't think I would be sitting here right now talking about being a wedding photographer because I just never would have had the opportunity. I never would have had the money. I don't think I would have even thought to do it because I really wouldn't have known that I would have liked it unless, maybe I guess I could be completely wrong, right? Like if I never went to nursing school, I could still have maybe one day picked up a camera.
Yeah.
So I guess that's maybe not true, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Like you wonder like are we just drawn to this eventually? Like are we just gonna like are we
Yeah, like our souls, like maybe our souls innately know like what we're meant for, but our brains don't. So it's like we're just trying to muddle our way through to something that seems right, or is it all just random?
Yeah, you never know really, but at least we are here now. And we're trying our best to keep on creating and improving, which is what we were talking about before. But I don't know, like I said, this podcast, you just be prepared for us to just talk about all different sorts
Like
of things.
whatever.
I forgot
Yeah.
that we're talking about constructive criticism, but but
Yeah, I mean, we got off tangent, but I feel like it went in a good place, and I feel like we're both sharing our stories.
yeah,
Also my LED light did run out of battery, so I turned on ambient lighting.
it's okay.
Um,
So, we want to end the podcast with a quick little story from childhood. we used to have, I know we talked a little bit about like having family videos, right? So we would, at this beach house, it's a famous, infamous, some might say, this beach house in Rhode Island. And we would have these videos. There was one video, but on that week, we'll talk about that video, that home video later. But at that week, we were really into Britney Spears at the time. This was like 2002. I remember 2002. I just know it's 2002. And we were listening to like her first album. I know it came out earlier than that, but we were listening to the first album. And we also were very aware of the music video, like her first music video, where she was like in that school girl uniform. So cringy. And we were dancing in the beach house bedroom, one of them jumping on the bed. And we like tied our shirts like a regular long shirt, not a crop top, long shirt. And we would tie it so like you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm not going on, but you remember
Yeah.
this, right? Yes.
Yes, like you tuck it in over the top and
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
like
So
pull it down so that it's kind of like a bra.
yeah, basically it's like a long sleeve with the bra. I'm like, this is very Britney Spears in that one music video when she's like going through the school, and we're like, wow, so cool. And so that would be us jumping around, just
Yeah, or
jamming.
years later wearing a tie to school because Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, we're very influenced by pop culture, and each other.
I remember like making a pact with each other that we were gonna both do that. Do you remember that?
I think I kind of do. Yeah, actually, wasn't that in at the
It was in like
CCD?
middle school.
No, it was in middle school. It was earlier than that. It was like, well, yeah, it's 11, maybe 10, 11, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe like fifth grade. Yeah.
Yeah. And were we in like my CCD class? Like my CCD, it was not CCD, but like I have a memory of like, it was some church activity, but we
I
were,
think it was too. I feel like I went to your CCD
yeah, you
class.
went to
I
my
feel like I remember
CCD,
that.
but it wasn't during active hours. It was just in the building because the building was across from where the church was. Like there was a church event going on, and we went into the CCD building, and we were
Yes,
just
yes, I remember
yes,
this.
and we were in the CCD building, and
Was it the festival?
it was some kind of festival, probably, yeah. And they had like they would serve food in that building too, I think. And we went upstairs to like one of the classrooms, and then you were wearing like the Avril Lavigne tie and stuff like that. And I do remember talking about that. Like we were trying to be like skaters, like we're so cool. Um, and
Oh my
so
God,
yeah,
so
so
funny.
from Britney Spears to Avril Lavigne to other kinds of style icons of the early 2000s. We've seen it all. But yeah,
Well, it's so fun to reminisce, and I hope that our listeners enjoyed this episode
yeah,
of Creative Cousins. We have a lot more stories and a lot more experiences to share, so we're just happy that you're here and excited for the next one.
yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll hopefully see you in the next one.